Binge watch the explosive revenge thriller A Killer Paradox in one go. A girl was targeted by a wealthy heir simply because she wore a short skirt. Even though she tried hard to be mindful of her hemline, she still couldn't escape his predatory grasp.
진짜 그지? 나 그게 문제가 아니야. 그냥 한채가 좋대. 빨리 와 일단은. 빨리 와. 일단 보고 싶어.
After the incident, the two heirs, being underage, remained free of consequences, and the police let the matter slide. Unable to bear the immense psychological trauma, the girl chose to jump to her death. What's even more infuriating is that the wealthy heir's mother turned the blame around, claiming the two children were both willing, and even made a scene at the memorial service.
남자가 여자가 만나면 그런 일이 생길 수 있는 거지.
뭐라고? 자, 보자 이 아줌마가
누가 먼저
합의하에 남녀가 만나면 뭐 그럴 수 있어?
But the girl's father was just an ordinary worker, powerless to stand against a rich family, and could only watch as his daughter died with no justice. Unexpectedly, the two heirs soon met their downfall, when the male lead accidentally struck them dead with a brick. Even stranger, within 1 week, he killed 4 people in a row, yet all the evidence mysteriously vanished. What baffled him most was that every person he killed turned out to be a despicable member of society. His name was Li Tang. One day, while working at a convenience store, he unexpectedly encountered a drunk man. The old man not only refused to pay, but also hurled insults at Li Tang. Li Tang patiently explained that you have to pay before taking the items. Luckily, the old man's friend was polite and quickly paid in cash. At that moment, Li Tang was speechless. He had to deal with odd customers like this several times a day. But unexpectedly, on his way home after work that night, Li Tang saw the old man lying on the ground. Seeing that the man was fine, he didn't bother to intervene. Coincidentally, he turned a corner and ran into the man's friend. Li Tang kindly reminded him that his friend was lying on the ground, but the man simply said it was fine.
꺼져라고. 꺼져.
The male lead was utterly confused, and suddenly thought of his own miserable life. Since childhood, he had always been unlucky, often bullied by the school thugs. In his personal dictionary, the word fight back did not exist. For Li Tang, life was not a subjective question, it was a multiple choice one. But that day, he didn't know where the courage came from, and for the first time, he decided to fight back. He then picked up a hammer and, with a single blow, took the man down. That day became the turning point of Li Tang's life. But when Li Tang got home, he began trembling, as the man he had killed seemed like a ghost, haunting him relentlessly. Li Tang was instantly at a loss, knowing that even an accidental killing could mean years in prison. What made things worse was that in the heat of his first kill, he had forgotten to take the murder weapon from the scene. Li Tang felt that his life was truly about to be over. The next day, police analyzed the crime scene and found that the victim's head had been struck with a blunt object, causing him to die from excessive blood loss. Coincidentally, this was an old neighborhood with no surveillance cameras installed. Soon after, Zhang Nangam came to investigate the area, gathering all the nearby footage from any cameras. One scene from the convenience store caught the captain's attention, prompting him to return to the shop. Li Tang's nervous glances immediately aroused the officer's suspicion. Just as Li Tang was about to stammer out an explanation of what happened yesterday, one of the officer's subordinates rushed in with a report.
박 형사님 말대로 서로 죽인 게 맞네요. 목격자도 찾았고요. 진술도 일치합니다. 서로 취해서 다툼이 있었다고 하는데 이광훈이 벽돌로 먼저 때린 것 같습니다.
At that moment, Li Tang narrowly escaped questioning, but Zhang Nangam still had doubts, though when reviewing the surveillance footage, his view was coincidentally blocked by a fly. What shocked Li Tang even more was discovering that the man he had accidentally killed was actually a ruthless serial killer.
사이코패스의 특성 중 하나가 조종과 거짓말, 위장 기술이 매우 뛰어나다는 겁니다.
인간봉계다 이게.
당시의 잔혹한 사건들이 재조명되고 있는데요. 보험금을 노리고 한 가정집에 무단으로 침입한 뒤.
Although he had escaped legal punishment, the dead man's shadow still followed him, often appearing in his mind. Even when going downstairs to take out the trash, he could see him. Most importantly, the murder weapon, the hammer, had never been found, weighing heavily on Li Tang's heart. But the most terrifying event happened the day the blind girl from that night suddenly appeared, demanding 2 million won in cash. Li Tang tried to brush her off, pretending not to understand what she was saying, but to his shock, the girl was only pretending to be blind.
사람 막 죽일 때 사람이 말을 하는데 그 대답을 안 하니 200만 원? 행복하세요? 여기 망치는 없죠?
It turned out she had taken the hammer. With no choice, Lee Tang asked every friend and relative he could, and after much struggle, finally gathered the 2 million won, then nervously went to the girl's home.
사실 저 진짜 놀랬잖아요 그날. 아니 생각해봐요. 이 사람이 싫어서 밤 산책하는 건데 갑자기 막 사람 죽는 거 보니까. 아니 뭐 다른 아저씨도 그쪽이 죽였어요?
아니에요. 그거랑 교환하는 거 맞죠?
예, 뭐 당연하죠. 기억하고 있겠지만 메달이에요? 미치셨냐고. 나도 지금 누구 때문에 공범 비슷하게 되는 건데.
But he was poor, and 2 million was already his limit. He snatched the hammer back and told the girl, "It's only 2 million, take it or leave it," but the girl kept pushing, threatening him further. It turned out she had done her homework and knew all about his situation. With today's technology, your fingerprints are everywhere, she said. You can't run forever. As long as I testify in court, you're finished. Even if it was accidental, you'd still get at least 15 years. Once you have a criminal record for killing, your life is over. But to his surprise, the girl said she could help him hide the evidence, and she could even give him a discount on the hush money.
도와줘요. 말아요.
더 줘.
She smiled sweetly, but in Lee Tang's mind, a terrifying image flashed. The thought of becoming her dog for the rest of his life filled him with pain and conflict. He had been unlucky since he was a child, and now as an adult, he had fallen into the hands of a twisted girl. So once again, he acted on impulse, picked up the hammer, and brought it down with force. The unlucky protagonist once again acted on impulse and killed someone, his heart filled with pain and guilt. He had only been a disheartened college student, yet now he had fallen to the level of a serial killer. But this time, Lee Tang was calm. He not only kept the money but also took the hammer, and in a flash, he was gone without a trace, leaving behind only the girl's body and a dog. A week quickly passed, until one day, the milk delivery man noticed something unusual. He climbed onto the wall to take a look, and was completely terrified by what he saw. Soon, the police sealed off the scene, and the veteran officer was speechless in his 20 years as a detective. It was the first time he had encountered such a horrific case. With the body eaten down to almost nothing by the dog, a group of officers tried to catch the dog, but it was incredibly agile, and they failed to grab it. Even more unexpectedly, the police discovered something strange in a hole the dog had dug. Inside were 2 skeletons. The most shocking part was that the remains belonged to the girl's parents. What frustrated the police even more was that due to the dog's licking, no usable fingerprints could be found anywhere in the house.
문 손잡이 같은 지문이 묻을 만한 것들부터 테이블, 방바닥까지 얼마나 핥았는지 다 개침이에요.
관상학적으로는 무죄야, 무죄.
Meanwhile, Lee Tang, with his harmless appearance, could no longer bear the torment in his heart and considered ending his life. But he still couldn't bring himself to do it. Helpless, Lee Tang went out drinking alone, but what completely shocked him was that after police investigation and analysis, it turned out the blind girl had been a twisted killer who murdered her own parents. For the first time, Lee Tang realized that all the people he had killed were actually terrible criminals. Even more unexpectedly, Lee Tang discovered he had developed a special ability. He could instantly tell who was evil. By coincidence, the 2 thugs he encountered were the very scum who had assaulted a young girl and driven her to jump to her death. But after killing 3 times in a row, Lee Tang could no longer handle the immense pressure, so he gathered his courage and decided to turn himself in. By sheer coincidence, just a few steps outside, a biker gang snatched the bag containing the evidence and threw it straight into the river. At that moment, Lee Tang completely abandoned the idea of confessing. Meanwhile, the police were in an uproar. The string of murders prompted the formation of a special investigation unit. But 4 months passed with no progress. During this time, Lee Tang decided to leave this place of sorrow, move abroad, and start a new life. But unexpectedly, on the subway ride to the airport, he ran into a boy. What shocked him even more was that the boy knew all about his killings. With no choice, Lee Tang followed him back home. The boy's name is Robin, and he grew up with a dream of being a knight errant, until, unintentionally, he starts investigating this latest serial murder case. He realizes that all these people who died are scum and the evidence of the killings have strangely disappeared on their own. Robin feels that this is an act of God and Li Tang is the embodiment of justice. Li Tang wonders what Robin's purpose is, but Robin tells Li Tang to continue to do justice and is willing to join forces with Li Tang to become the Invincible Justice League. Robin has $50 million in cash, which is enough to fulfill Li Tang's wish, but at this moment, Li Tang is totally confused.
아니 저는
그러니까 당신은 잘못한 게 없어요. 인간 쓰레기들을 그냥 청소한 것뿐이지. 청소한 게 잘못한 건 아니잖아요. 그러니까 도망칠 이유가 없다 그 말입니다. 제 말은. 저랑 같이 하시면 도망 안 다니게 제가 도와드리겠습니다.
So Robin started to brainwash Li Tang every day, kindly advising him not to think so complicatedly, which is Li Tang's innate superpower. If you don't believe me, you can try to kill someone randomly to verify whether he is a scum. What makes Li Tang even more dumbfounded is that Robin's house is just like a murderer's shopping center, which has all kinds of killing equipment, more cash than he can spend, and even more knives, guns, sticks and clubs. So Li Tang once again found a target. The other party is still a prosecutor.
예, 제가 뭘 잘못했어요? 예?
그러니까요. 제가 왜 아저씨를 죽이려는 걸까요? 우리가 여기 이렇게 있냐고요.
아니 그거를 제가 뭐 어떻게 알아요?
But Robin found out the reason through the computer of the other party.
자식 돈 때문에 그러죠? 예? 돈 드릴게요. 돈 드릴게요. 예? 제가 잘못했습니다. 제가 잘못했습니다.
The prosecutor was killed in no time. From that day on, the Justice League was officially opened. In the following days, Li Tang became a shining light in the dark night. Robin even thoughtfully gave Li Tang a new identity, and from then on, Li Tang disappeared completely. Li Tang's superpower is accuracy. As long as the people Li Tang sees are criminals who have escaped justice, they all deserve to die. They are all a bunch of top scum. Li Tang's killings are not controlled by emotion, and there is no motive or cost. It is pure goodness and absolute justice. Li Tang is the embodiment of justice, although still no one will recognize this behavior. Just unexpectedly, Zhang Nangam soon found Robin, and without saying a word, he came up to torture him into confessing. Zhang Nangam beat Robin severely, yet even so, he still did not give up Li Tang's name. The next moment, Zhang Nangam received a call from the leader.
뭔 소리야? 뭔 침입을 인터넷에 뭐가 퍼졌다고?
너가 노민이 때린 거 다 찍혀서 퍼졌다고 인마. 영장도 없이 그렇게 막 들이대면 어쩌자는 거야? 어? 경찰이 심히 협박하고 팬다고 신고 들어왔어.
It turned out that Robin's house was being broadcast live, and the footage of the police officer hitting the man had instantly festered on the internet. Now the police officer was really in trouble too. As a result, Zhang Nangam is officially suspended from his unit. Meanwhile, Li Tang has gone into hiding and is working at a seafood supermarket. Here he also meets the first woman who makes his heart flutter. This girl seemed a lot like him, as she too was unwilling to talk about her past to anyone. Unfortunately, this girl encountered a bad man, even fell in love with the scumbag, and was ultimately strangled to death by him. What's worse, the scummy guy burned down the girl's home with a fire. When Li Tang heard the news, he was utterly baffled. Could it be that he was not only able to foresee, but also a messenger of death? Right after that, Li Tang suddenly noticed a strange man who seemed to be watching him closely. Sensing danger, Li Tang took off running, but misfortune struck again just as he tried to escape. He ran straight into Officer Zhang Nangam. Before he could get 10 meters away, Song Chan blocked his path. Fortunately, Zhang Nangam arrived unexpectedly, allowing Li Tang to slip away once more. Through questioning, Zhang Nangam confirmed that Li Tang had indeed worked here before. However, the local police were displeased in their eyes. A suspended officer had no right to investigate on their turf. His fellow officers demanded that Zhang Nangam leave immediately, and no matter how he explained, it was useless. Meanwhile, Song Chan had tracked down the scumbag.
사실 제가 여자친구가 있는 상태에서 경화를 만났고 경화도 그걸 알고 저를 만났는데 진짜 안 죽였어요.
살려주려고 했는데 야 소가 넘어가겠어. 하도 당당해서.
It turned out that Song Chan was in the same line of work as Lee Tang, also someone who claimed to punish the wicked, but unlike Lee Tang, he was far more twisted. He killed purely for pleasure, and because of Lee Tang's presence, Song Chan's reputation in the underground world was shaken, so he racked his brain for ways to eliminate his competition. At the same time, Zhang Nangam located Lee Tang's rental apartment, but it was already covered in fire extinguisher powder, with every trace of Lee Tang destroyed. Elsewhere, his colleague had arrived at the scumbag's home, only to discover that Song Chan had planted an improvised bomb inside. The police quickly identified the suspect who had sprayed the fire extinguisher, but the motive of the curly-haired man was bizarre simply because Lee Tang had rolled his eyes at him in the elevator. He wanted revenge. Now the police were completely baffled. The killer was the scumbag. The one who destroyed the evidence was the curly-haired man. And then there was Lee Tang on the run. This strange case was 1 in a million. Meanwhile, Song Chan had found Ro Bin. It turned out they had once been partners, but Ro Bin later realized that Song Chan had no real sense of justice, which went against the original intention of forming their justice alliance. So Ro Bin distanced himself and parted ways. But Song Chan could not accept this change in the past. Ro Bin had called him a hero of the era. Yet with Lee Tang's appearance, Song Chan was instantly reduced to a coward.
에이, 아이 그놈도 웃겨. 에이 인사 좀 하려고 그랬는데 그 쫄아가지고 어? 쥐새끼 마냥 쫄아라라.
Still, Ro Bin remained loyal and refused to reveal Lee Tang's whereabouts. He even risked his life trying to take down Song Chan, but unfortunately, his fighting skills were too weak, and he was instantly overpowered. By coincidence, Officer Yongjae happened to come looking for Ro Bin, and when they crossed paths, it was a battle of wills. Unfortunately, Yongjae was no match for the twisted man. Soon, Ro Bin was taken to the police station for questioning, where he gave Zhang Nangam a detailed report on all the information he had gathered about Song Chan.
부산 가스 폭발도 그 사람 짓입니다.
나는 너 같은 씹덕후 새끼들은 저래 믿을 생각 없으니까 꺼져. 응?
Meanwhile, Song Chan was still carrying out what he saw as justice, dragging an arrogant street punk to the rooftop. A girl pleaded desperately for him to spare the punk, but after giving her a patient lecture, Song Chan killed her as well. What no one expected was that the girl turned out to be the daughter of a powerful and wealthy family, and under the pressure from the conglomerate, the leadership once again sought out Detective Zhang Nangam, promising him a promotion and a raise, and to wipe clean his past mistakes, if he could capture Song Chan. At the same time, Lee Tang learned from Ro Bin about Song Chan's background, so he went straight to arrange a meeting with him. Unexpectedly, the twisted man felt a strange kinship, greeting Lee Tang with a fatherly smile. He believed Lee Tang could be his successor. Lee Tang had the supernatural ability to identify the wicked, while he had the ruthlessness to kill without hesitation. Together, they could be unbeatable, but Lee Tang wanted no part of joining forces with him and even tried to stab him in the back to kill him, only to be overpowered and pinned to the ground. No one could have expected that in the very next moment, 100 brutal thugs suddenly burst and sent by the conglomerate to take out Song Chan, giving Lee Tang yet another chance to slip away. However, Song Chan's combat skills were overwhelming. After a night of brutal fighting, all 100 men were left dead at his hands. By the time the police arrived, the scene was a pool of blood. Song Chan then went straight to the conglomerate's home.
혼자 있고 싶다고. 이 방에 아무도 들어오지 말래요. 언제까지요?
1시간. 먹어 먹고.
뻔하지. 당분간 들어오지 말래?
왜?
손녀 이른 밤 손녀 같은 애로 풀려고 그러나 보지 뭐.
It turned out that the conglomerate chairman was a despicable and corrupt man, and Song Chan believed that killing his granddaughter earlier had been an act of karmic retribution. The next second, the police burst in, but Song Chan remained calm and professional. driving a drill into the old man's artery. One pull, and he would be dead. It was then revealed that Song Chan had once been a police officer, even Jang Nangam's senior, but had been expelled from the force for misconduct. Now, Song Chan was finally captured, but during the transport, an unexpected turn allowed him to escape once again. The members of the Justice Alliance soon learned of this, leaving the two of them completely stunned. Worse still, friends and relatives now knew that Lee Tang was a killer, causing his mother to faint from shock. At this time, the two were still on the run. Robin then came up with a new plan. We can sneak out of the country, but Song Chan quickly tracked down their whereabouts. Robin, in an act of loyalty, didn't tell Lee Tang about Song Chan's whereabouts. Instead, he suggested they split up, letting Lee Tang leave first. Lee Tang, however, installed a tracker on Robin's phone just in case. Unexpectedly, Robin went to turn himself in and asked Jang Nangam to help capture Song Chan. On the way, Robin revealed the background of all the people Lee Tang had killed, but Jang Nangam still didn't agree with this kind of justice, warning Robin, "You have no right to decide a criminal's fate." Robin shot back, accusing Jang Nangam of abusing his power for personal reasons. Jang Nangam explained, "It's because Song Chan killed my father that I have no choice but to catch him." Robin then suggested using himself as bait to lure Song Chan out. Soon, the two worked together to find him. Meanwhile, Lee Tang also arrived at the scene using the tracker, which made Song Chan extremely excited. A fierce battle was about to erupt. In the end, Jang Nangam shot and killed Song Chan. The story concluded with the police announcing the results. Over the past few years, Song Chan had killed 30 people, and Robin had taken all the blame for Lee Tang, clearing Lee Tang's name once more. From then on, Lee Tang returned to his old line of work, becoming a true ray of light in the darkness. See you in the next movie.